Welcome, everyone, to Roundtable Talk number 6, exploring the impact of large stakeholders in Catalyst and its potential repercussion on Cardano's governance. These roundtable talks are educational, aimed at sharing ideas, engaging in meaningful discussions. They also provide a platform for community engagement, allowing us to explore different perspectives on a variety of ongoing topics. In the previous Catalyst funding round, Minswap provided valuable insights through a comprehensive report of their voting decisions. Their approach and level of transparency have inspired others in the ecosystem, including Liquid Finance, Cardano Foundation, Fluid Tokens, and Wing Riders. Unfortunately, Minswap is unable to join us here today due to travel engagements, but it's okay. Today's roundtable talk will focus on their roles as major ADA holders and DeFi protocols in Project Catalyst and the future of Cardano governance. The roundtable talk is segmented into 3 parts. The first part is understanding the processes of how the DeFi protocols are set up. The second is really going into the borrowing of voting power. And the third and final segment, that was where we kind of discussed the future of Cardano governance. But first, let's get to know the table members. Ronan.
Yeah, so it's Roman actually. So hi everyone. So I'm Wing Rider's product lead. If you could join the meeting.
Thank you. Zigo.
Hey, I'm Zygo with Optim Finance.
Thank you. Welcome. Alex.
Hey everybody, I'm the sustainability lead at the Cardano Foundation. I work on kind of 2 things. So like sustainability through the blockchain. So what you would know is blockchain for good, everything that has to do with the UN agencies, sustainable development goals. And then I look at the sustainability of the blockchain. And there I work quite closely with Nico and the rest of the team that's leading on the governance stuff. And my specific focus is Project Catalyst right now. So hi, everybody.
Thank you. Nicholas.
Hey, everyone. My name is Nicholas. I'm the governance lead at the Cardano Foundation. And basically what I'm doing is, 24/7 Cardano governance, of course, but also how do we set up the Cardano Foundation as a successful and transparent player in the Cardano governance landscape? And then also how do we push governance participation in general in the Cardano community? And how can we, up the ante there?
Thank you, Nicholas. Raul.
Hi everyone, I'm Raul, CTO at Fluid Tokens, and happy to be here.
Thank you for joining. Last but not least, Michele.
Hi everyone, I'm Michele from Armor Advisors, but I'm here to represent my views, not any projects in particular.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. It's always good to get to know the people behind the projects and also the table members. So let's dive right in. Alex, based on your recent released blog post, it's clear that you now follow a approach similar to Minswap. What prompted you to change your approach compared to Fund 12?
It's a good question, and it's a question that the community has been asking of CF. So what we did, and I'd encourage everybody to kind of read up on this, we released a blog a week or so ago to state that we were voting on all categories, almost for the entirety of the budgets, with 180 million ADA. And we did a follow-up blog about this yesterday. And what you can see is also the methodology on this. The departure is essentially in Fund 12, we voted with 20 million ADA on a much more restricted amount of proposals across different budget categories. And we also did not communicate that until the fund closed. Whereas in this case, we communicated it approximately 2 days before voting closed in Fund 13. Now, why did CF participate way more this time than in Fund 12? So we can kind of track it back to Barcelona for the Fund 12 launch, where the CF CEO, Fred Gregard, made a keynote and shared CF's vision for being a little bit more impactful in Catalyst, as Catalyst is actually the sandbox for governance on Cardano. I think we've all kind of participated there in some way or form over the past 4 years. And we've kind of seen the social layer build up about how, let's say, OGs, new entrants, and eventually kind of, let's say, public whales then started participating as the funds progressed. What we also noticed is that there's a kind of slow adoption of governance participation in terms of DREPs that are formed or delegated to, right? And again, always thinking that Catalyst is the sandbox for governance on Cardano. What we noticed when we voted with 20 million ADA, which is, you know, it's not size of some of the other large stakeholders like Minswap or Liquid that voted in that fund, but we still thought it would get some kind of reaction from the community. And it kind of went mostly unnoticed, which was surprising because this was a big departure from how we'd actually previously participated in Catalyst and voted. So in Fund 7 to 9, we used to vote with 14.5 million ADA on challenge settings. So just purely kind of nudging the direction a little bit based on our strategy and our focus areas. And in this case, we decided to kind of up the ante and kind of with the goal of actually kind of pushing the discussion forward. And I think what we've seen over the past week is overall quite positive in the sense that people are pushing for more participation in governance. They are pushing for better balances of power for large stakeholders within Catalyst, and they're more cognizant of the fact that one ADA, one vote means one ADA, one vote, and to be wary of these risks, but also the inherent opportunities that exist for large stakeholder participation. So all in all, the perspective is let's increase governance participation. Let's make our governance system resilient to attacks from large stakeholders.
Yeah, Alex, I know we will get into this later on in the discussion, and thanks, by the way, for also clarifying that. Could you walk us through your internal process and just so that the viewers may understand how you arrived at the final list of proposals that you voted on?
So it wasn't me, it was the foundation, but this was a group of really passionate people, approximately 30. So that's a third of all of the staff at the foundation that actually participated in this. And the way that we went about is actually detailed in the PDF that is attached to the first blog post. And in a nutshell, we thought we would have 3 levels of participation. One, we would have champions who would kind of take a look at, and here I'm just going to explain at a very high level and encourage you to go into the weeds of it, and feel free to, you know, reach out to me if you want to understand this a bit more. But in a nutshell, you have champions. So these are subject matter experts within the CF that are either in engineering, open source, tech integration, biz dev, marketing, etc., that are assigned proposals. They review them and they will champion the proposal. So in a sense, they reviewed the proposal and they think it's so good that they're going to kind of say, this one is really good. I think we should probably vote on this. And so we do this repeatedly over a certain period of time up until the reviews from these champions are closed. And then these champions would get challenged by contrarians. What contrarians would do is try to poke holes into the champion's motivation and rationale.
Yeah.
They would try to look at some of the inherent risks that they may or may not have realized. And what was really interesting to see happen was, like, I thought my colleagues were smart, but the level of debate about what made a good proposal versus not, why certain things should be considered versus not, was a really fascinating thing to see. And so by the end of it, once we had a list after which, you know, the contrarians and champions challenged each other pretty robustly, you know, it'd be fantastic at some point if people knew how thoroughly some of their proposals were championed and maybe didn't even actually make it through because of how thorough some of the contrarians were. Then eventually this kind of long list gets shared with our executive committee, who have, by virtue of their role at the foundation and the way that the foundation is governed as an organization, the final call to say, as CF, we will vote on these particular proposals. Now, one thing that we did see in how this was done is the large volume of how we would kind of go through a certain amount of proposals in a specific period of time. And this is something that Minswap, for example, has a very different approach of doing, and same thing with Liqwid. I'm sure we'll hear this with Wing Riders. Mm-hmm. But what we had were also very specific guidelines that these champions, contrarians, as well as the executive committee was kind of looking at the whole time while they were also looking at proposals. Mm-hmm. First off, and what guided this was our Cardano, which has been shared by the foundation earlier this year, as well as some of our strategic focus areas, and specifically the notion and our mission to drive adoption, right? And adoption is measured as an increase of transactions, of diversity of transactions, and of value of transactions. And beyond that, there are a few other bits and pieces like measurable impact, enterprise adoption, enhancing the developer ecosystem, some level of track record, and
are you saying, because just to, sorry to cut you across here, are you saying that, okay, so you're saying a third of the Cardano Foundation partook in this process, and there was a particular, let's say, scoring that was applied to each proposal, and the one basically eventually deciding, who was that? Was that like the executive board, or how was that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's what we shared in our methodology, right? The exco would then conduct a final review of everything that the champions of the contrarians have looked at and commented on, and then they choose a final shortlist to make sure that this aligns to the organization's focus areas. But in the end, essentially what you had were 20 odd people within the foundation, experts, providing some level of review and suggestion to the exco, saying this is what we think as experts, as community members. This was also the big thing, is a lot of the feedback was based on actual expertise within the community. And so that was a suggestion, a recommendation, so to speak, to the executive committee who made the final decision.
Okay, thanks. It's really good to have that understanding, of course, from someone within CF, of how that process is structured from within. Okay, so thanks for clarifying that. I do want to turn now to Wing Riders. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this was your first time participating in Catalyst voting as a DAO, right?
Yeah, that's completely right. So basically, we have been.
Ronan, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so indeed you're right. So this was our first time. So we have been observing for some time that other major protocols are starting to use the ADA in their pools for the voting. And since we wanted also to make the impact and put the ADA in our liquidity pools to work, we also decided, okay, let's build the technology. Of course, it was preceded by DAO voting. So we have described an intention and it went through the DAO vote and it passed successfully. And then basically, we decided to give the green light and develop the tooling to make it happen.
Okay, that's fair. Absolutely. Can you just briefly, can you walk us through the DAO process? Because I know with Minswap, there was a vote that was put up to a vote. Did you follow the same approach as with Minswap as well? Or
so basically, of course, we got inspired by the Minswap. So we took a look at other major protocols and what they are doing, and considering our options, I would say time and materials effort that we could put in place, and we decided to tweak the process a bit. So we came up with a guideline that was public or made public to the community, so everyone could take a look on how the things would work. It consisted through multiple categories on how we would come up with the final shortlist of the proposals. And it served multiple goals. So the first category of how proposals got selected, of course, we pre-selected Wingrider's proposals under the assumption these are in the general interest of our liquidity providers for the platform, basically to proceed further in the ecosystem. Then we also wanted to utilize the community reviewers from Cardano Catalyst. They did, I would say, tremendous job of reviewing all the proposals and giving them score based on their impact and the benefits. So we came up with a short list of 100 proposals that were sorted based on the average scores. We randomized that list and assigned it to the community reviewer or kind of a review committee that consisted of our core team members, community moderators, and also some DAO members. So basically, we asked for volunteers within our community on who would like to participate in the review process. So in total, I think we had 30 members in the committee, and they randomly assigned the proposals to review. So I think each of them had 9 to 10 proposals. These proposals got scored, sorted, and for the proposals that we were unclear whether they make it to the list, we basically did a second round of the reviews to come up with the final shortlist. Yeah, so that was the second category. Yes. Then we also run similar to Minswap Twitter engagement campaign. So we came up with some metrics on how to assess that, not just the general marketing metrics like and retweet and spreading the word, but also again we utilize the community reviewers list and the scores they get in that voting, and also whether those projects or protocols are in any way participating in Wingrider's liquidity program or are under our partnership program or something similar. Yeah, so that was another one, and then we also allowed generic submission directly on our application. So any DAO member who would hold VRT tokens could come and basically promote some of the proposals directly in the application, and those would be also considered for the final vote. Yeah. And basically, this is how we come up with a list of 60 proposals that were put to the DAO vote, and DAO vote members could select up to 30 or actually 25 because 5 Wingriders got pre-selected. Yeah. Okay. And then the DAO vote took place. I think there was a week to vote for that, and we came up with the finalist came for voting.
That's clear.
So basically, and just to summarize, so the goal of the entire process was that for it to be transparent, community-oriented, and approved by the DAO, who basically, in the very last sense, has the final say on what the DAO should do.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for clarifying that as well. One of the things that I think would be interesting for the viewers and listeners to understand is what does it really mean to participate as a DAO? Because you're not the only one. The Wingriders is not the only one. We see, I believe, Minswap doing the same, and I also believe there's other DeFi protocols participating as a DAO. What does that mean? Can you just explain that for the audience to understand?
Sure. So basically, you have Wingrider's operational entity, which is basically technologically running the things, but we also need to comply with DAO decisions. And what is DAO? DAO is basically any VRT token holder who has a voting power and has a say in how we do things. Anyone from the DAO can submit proposals, put them to the vote. They can promote them, and with sufficient justification, and I would say promotion, they could get approved. And we had to basically go in the very same steps for the Catalyst voting, basically following the DAO guidelines. We were actually one of the first protocols to enable on-chain DAO voting. So any DAO vote is recorded on the Wingrider's on-chain platform. It is auditable, traceable, so you can look to the past and see how the DAO vote basically took off. Yeah. And this also provides some legal groundwork for DAO to operate. So let's say in future, if any regulator would come, they can also check how the decisions were made, and they follow basically this legal process to do it. Yeah. So I think this is quite important to make DAO really also to be on-chain and on the paper. Not just that we say, okay, we are DAO operated, but in the very end, it's DAO who approves, and it's everything recorded and traceable.
Yeah, this is good. Thanks for also clarifying that, because it also gives the audience and the viewers, really good understanding of what it really means to participate, as a DAO. So thanks for that. I do want to move on to the second segment, and the second segment is really focused on borrowing of voting power. So. For the first question, I'm going to focus on fluid tokens. Unlike others, Fluid token does not participate in Catalyst voting directly. Instead, you provide a solution for ADA holders to enable them to borrow voting power. Can you briefly elaborate on this solution and explain how it works?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, why Fluid does not participate as a DAO on Catalyst? Well, mainly because all the liquidity that is provided in Fluid is still under the control of the liquidity provider, meaning that even if the liquidity is inside the protocol, we as Fluid have no control on the Catalyst or the rep power, whatever. And this is actually what is our vision and our goal. Not meaning that is the best approach, because there are some technical difficulties when you do something like this. However, we prefer not to be, let's say, not to bear this responsibility. And 1 year and a half ago, no, 1 year ago, we came up with a boosted stake that was a solution to increase your staking delegation. And why this? It was done because basically we started from our renting of NFTs, and then we moved to the renting of staking delegation. In that time, at that moment, there were many ICPOs running. ICPOs are a mechanism of fundraising for projects, and therefore users were looking to increase their staking delegation. And Boosted Stake was a perfect fit for this. And as side effect, however, this means that the user could not just borrow staking delegation only for ICPOs, but also for Catalyst right now, and also in the new era, also for DREP. If I borrow staking delegation on Boosted Stake, after 10 days, it will be countable with my DREP or whoever I'm delegating with. Mm-hmm. And it's important to note one thing. We actually didn't came up with this just by ourselves. Actually, it's even possible to do it without smart contracts, meaning that if Fluid didn't started to do this, however, even the users could start to do between them in a peer-to-peer manner using the classic addresses, because every address on Cardano has two keys: the spending and the staking. And usually when you use your wallet, you are the one controlling these two pieces. Yeah. However, what happens if I am the one in the control of the staking delegation and you are the one in the spending key? We are able to trade and to control and manage different things. You can spend and I can vote on Catalyst. We are splitting up the power. And so this is how we came up with a solution, and we decided to democratize a bit this trading of staking delegation.
Yeah, interesting take. Also different approach, which I do respect that, definitely. Let's Optim. You know what? I've done some research, and based on your ODAO proposal 0016, Optim offers a dedicated solution for ADA holders or other projects to borrow voting power. I think it's called Liquidity Bonds. Without promoting the product itself, would you briefly explain how this works and how it helps others to enhance their voting power?
So 2 years ago, we launched Liquidity Bonds as a solution for time-based, specifically longer durations of borrowing stake, which was remarkably successful, topped off at 50 million ADA in TVL. And I think over the lifetime of the product, it's done, I can check real quick, over 150 million ADA in volume, just trading longer durations, first 1 year durations, then 6 months, 3 months, and finally ending at 1 month borrow durations, which again was the most successful one, and was primarily used to initially as a way for SPOs to get initial chunk of delegation to bootstrap their pools, later on evolving into more user speculations facing role for speculators to invest into an ISPO. And this was remarkably successful and a great source of revenues for everyone. And what what came later was the drop of ISPOs no longer being popular, and I saw the faults of that product for a long time. And what ultimately ended up in us launching OADA, I think 4 months ago, and that product has tremendously optimized the process of acquisition of stake as is, as well as perpetual liquidity provision via an optimized and not just stake renting way. So for a passive ADA holder, they can just drop the ADA into the product and sit on it, not having to do any manual management, not having to worry. And the system strategies just take care of everything, including on an epoch to epoch basis, selling those staking rights. And over the course of those 4 months, we've seen over half a billion right now, approaching 600 million of ADA volume on that notional size of stake. And every epoch, it continues to churn all that through bids, through a continuous Dutch auction, renting out that stake for the highest bidders. And for the Catalyst epoch specifically, what we've done in the proposal 0016 is specifically choose a high starting point for that auction, and the least amount of bids, least amount of payments you would need to bid on a unit acquired of stake, which the smallest unit you can acquire is actually 250,000 ADA in that auction. So we've set a minimum price for that, which translated to, I want to say, if I forget, 100% annualized return to the liquidity provider, to the system, which actually in practice came out to nobody actually buying that at that price. So we found, at the very least, for the size offered and the price being this much, that it was too high. And instead, the contingency clause in 0016 kicked in, and all that voting power was captured to the ODAO. And through those measures, we have also been running a program for Liquidity Catalyst OADA partners, which allowed people, in the case that the ODAO does capture that voting power, to acquire the votes in a purely merit-based way. So we've had 5 spots for people to rank, for projects to rank, and they have all provided liquidity against OADA in their project's native token, and through that they earned votes. Top 2 projects earned 2 votes each, and top 3, 4, and 5 projects earned 1 vote each. Remaining votes were cast freely by the ODAO, including our proposals and a few proposals from general all around the ecosystem. And you can see that in, I want to say 0020 or something, no, 0221, where we actually outlined those free votes that we've had for the DAO to choose from. So that is how we approach this. And I believe the best solution for Catalyst voting, especially, is purely an outline and merit-based way. Now, not at very least for current state where we can't choose exactly what wins. And as a comment on CF's methodology, personally, I would have done the same. I would have done the same if I were in their position. And it's something I actually had thought about doing for ourselves, meaning picking the full set of winners. It's a valid strategy. It takes a lot of effort, though.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. Of course, that's a discussion for another time. But I do want to thanks, by the way, for sharing your the side, of course, of Optim Finance. I do want to move on because we also have Michele with us, and I think Michele, there was a tweet that was shared not too long ago, I can say. It was an interesting discussion between yourself and Alex, who was here on the call, about the possibilities DeFi provides for borrowing voting power. And I understand you're somewhat critical to such solutions like what Optim and Fluid tokens basically are doing or allowing or providing when it comes to acquiring voting power. So in your response, you said here to Alex is like, hey, are we democratizing? For what I see, Optim had no votes on which proposals to vote. And then you went on, you said here, I'm not against the protocol. I'm against what in principle allows it. So I see no democracy here. On top of this, in the previous fund, it costed as low as $2,000 to get 40 million voting power. I know it because I myself used it. I alone voted with LQ to have a proposal passed. Without the liquid vote, my proposal would not have been approved. I alone decided that proposal was valid. And you ask the question, is that or is this democracy? Now, we've just heard from Optim Finance. We've just heard from Fluid Tokens. These are the platforms, and we know there are others as well who does the same, providing these solutions. I'm curious to hear your thought on that, Michele.
Sure. Well, first of all, regarding strictly the tweet, I want to make clear, I used the LQ that I already had. So I did not went purposely buying the bare minimum to pass it and then pass it. I had already some LQ because I believe in the project, in what they are doing. So I voted with what I already had. But all of this is on chain. So you can go look. Liquid, glad for us, we as on-chain votes, so you can independently verify what was going on that proposal. Mm-hmm. And you can see that the minimum, the 20 of the 50 already selected the proposal passed. The 20th one has a counter value of roughly $2,000 in counter value. So that is to say how low the bar is to hijack 40 million of voting power. Mm-hmm. There are various solutions. So the approach of the DAOs is, in my opinion, the most threatening one, because yes, as I was saying, Liquid is transparent. Minswap is entirely transparent. There is transparency. Our transparency is not enough. Like
why threatening? Because you said threatening. Why use such statement?
Threatening is. I mean, Catalyst honestly is the playground. You want to eject Catalyst? Go fine. I don't care about Catalyst. What I care about is governance, on-chain governance. We are actually governing an entire chain, like the top 10 chain by market cap. This is not a joke. We get to screw up once, and once we screw up, it's screwed. It's done.
But how is providing or allowing others to acquire voting power? I don't understand. How is that threatening?
Well, it's very, very simple. So one of the main critics that is being made to my way of thinking is, okay, we have one ADA, one vote. We already buy votes. The thing is, when you buy votes, when you buy actually ADA, you are subject to a risk. You take the risk of those ADA. CF has voted with their own ADA. They take the risk of owning ADA, and they take the risk of the protocol of Cardano. And they took the risk since it was created. So they have this power, and they pay the price of taking the risk in exchange for that power. When you go and borrow, you are not subject to the risk. The risk is who is the actual owner of the voting power, the ADA. So it's not like you can already buy vote. When you buy vote, you are subject to the risk. When you borrow vote, you do not buy the risk. The risk is of someone else. And you have an enormous leverage.
If I can just interject here, I think, right, one of the key things to understand is if a user does not willingly forfeit their voting rights to a protocol.
Yes.
Right. If they are providing liquidity and they are not they don't know that they are at the same time also now giving this protocol, not just, I mean, they're not giving the protocol the liquidity, but please bear with me, right, to make it understandable. But if they also then transfer the voting power, the additional utility that now comes with ADA to the protocol, right? And if that is not done intentionally, or if they're not informed, you could argue that do they then have the right? Does the protocol then have the right to really use this ADA in Catalyst,
Yes.
in governance, in borrowing it to other platforms, right? So
Yes.
I think really what's important is that the users are informed about what happens with their liquidity. And then, I mean, I'm all for freedom, and people, if they choose to lend their voting power to whoever, right, it's their right. It's a public permissionless system. Just
But
wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. When you like, I use myself Minswap, I use myself Liquid, I use this protocol, and I use this protocol not because I want to give my voting power. When I go deposit on a liquidity pool on Minswap, it is because there is the need for liquidity in order to perform the swaps, and swaps are a necessary thing on a decentralized system with so many tokens. So I'm providing my liquidity in order to allow this kind of application, not for you to vote on my behalf. When I go on Liquid, I'm providing the liquidity for others to borrow. I'm not giving you my voting power. I'm not allowing you to say what I think.
Oh, this is interesting. This is really, I'm sorry, but I do want to hear, of course, from Fluid Tokens and Optim, because you guys are essentially making this possible for others to borrow. What do you think about what Nicholas just said and what Mikila is also saying?
I think it's largely just like a small thing, right? If people truly cared about their vote, they would have withdrawn from Minswap. It's not like they were prevented by any means. If people really cared, you know how much effort it takes to withdraw from Liquid. Actually, it takes a little bit of effort to withdraw from Liquid because some UX concerns on their batchers. But it is fairly easy. It is fairly easy to do so from both systems. All it takes is just like set up an alarm before the snapshot is taken. I don't know, a few days, a week. You're not missing out on that much. Just withdraw.
But the conversation here or the discussion is not really about how easy it is to withdraw liquidity.
No. It is about that, because if this person is aware that the necessary service of providing liquidity on swaps is something they indeed want to participate in, but they don't want to give the voting power, and they know that the application that they're using is also paying them to basically capture their voting power implicitly or not. Why they're in fact selling their voting power and for quite cheap.
So now that's Liquid, but what is Fluid?
No, not just Liquid.
What is Optim doing?
All the access.
Oh, so
just to jump in really quickly, Denisio, here, I mean, I agree with Saigo, and the thing is really that, right, you always need to think about the resistance of when will a user become active, right? If they perceive they have only, I don't know, a few ADA, let's say, I don't know, 500 ADA, would they then go to their computer and terminate the liquidity position that they have just because they don't want 500 ADA to be affected, to be taken advantage of? Probably not, right? It's this resistance. I think that a lot of users will just say, okay, I don't care. I have in general not a lot of ADA, so my vote doesn't affect anything, but that compounds, right? And if 1,000 people think like that, then it can become a problem or more. But of course, what I'm questioning, and that is more of an ethical question, is should the protocol, if they're not explicitly, if they did not get the approval from the user to use the ADA in governance or in whatever capacity, should they then do it, right? This is, and I'm not judging that here, right? That's not my job here. I think this is the real question.
Yes, I believe so indeed. And just in addition here, should DeFi protocols make this explicit? that by providing liquidity, what the DeFi platform will basically do with that ADA? Should they make that explicit?
If I can just add one more thing, sorry, and then I'll be quiet. One thing I think that a lot of people need to understand, that if we now, for example, put it into the Cardano constitution that there should not be any vote buying, whatever. First of all, how would you enforce that? And second of all, what would happen is that all of this would happen off-chain. People would create off-chain voting markets where people can buy that, right? And that's also, I mean, that will happen, right?
Yeah.
So I'd rather see that more transparently happen on-chain, where I can track that, what's going on. But there's also things where this is not really good. So
that's the final segment. We're not there yet. We're not there yet, guys. We're still at segment number 2. Yeah.
So if I may, so it is not true that people will remove liquidity. That is not rational behavior. I mean, it's not rational, as also Nicholas said. If you perceive that your singular vote will not make an impact, you are not there going one transaction to remove, then one transaction to re-provide liquidity. And if this goes on chain and we have 1,000 of proposals, what are you going to do? You are going to do one transaction a day or even more, just to say, okay, no, I approve. Okay, no, just use direct vote at that point. It's totally irrational to presume that people will remove liquidity because they do not agree. It is irrational.
I agree with that, though. I do agree with that. But the question here is, should the DeFi protocols make that clear from the beginning? Should there be a disclaimer somewhere, just explaining or making it clear that, okay, by providing liquidity to our platform, then this essentially is what we will be doing, or what you will be doing.
In the Constitution, there is a clear statement that it is not explicit, but you can tell that it was included, especially for centralized exchanges, that tells people that own ADA through third parties must give their explicit agreement to use those ADA to vote. That is essentially put there because we have no control over centralized exchanges. We cannot do anything about centralized exchanges, and we are not even worrying about what we said. We can do something that is decentralized, even there, on-chain exchanges, that do use smart contracts. We can enforce rules on the ledger for smart contract not to explicit use the ADA that are meant to be used as liquidity, so on spending contracts. We can explicitly include that not to be counted. And then if the user really wants to give their power to these DAOs, they can then delegate through Franken address or through explicit direct delegation. That there are possible ways to, okay, I want to agree, but we can enforce not, at least on the exchanges that do use contracts. Regarding the off-chain, okay, if we remove this on-chain, then we remove it, we still have the off-chain problem. First of all, I see these are two separate problems. They have nothing to do with each other. We have control over one, and we do not have control over the other. What people do off-chain, they can do off-chain. As Raul said, if we didn't have these contracts, this would still be able off-chain. And my counter argument to that is anything can be done without contract. Like, I can agree with Zygo. I want Zygo has one Bitcoin. I have 1,000 ADA, and we want to do a swap. Yeah, I don't need a smart contract. I just need a simple transaction with my input, Zygo's input, and the opposite values. There is no need for a smart contract there. Everything can be done without a smart contract. What a smart contract allows is a contract, an agreement with two parties that do not trust each other. So it does allow it does facilitate largely within people that do not know each other how to perform this. Otherwise, still possible. Always, everything is possible without smart contract.
There is a question for you, I believe, here in the chat. So Pierre is asking, so you're suggesting that on DeFi platforms there should be a pop-up window asking you to give your consent?
I'm suggesting to remove entirely the DeFi platform for automatically voting, and then if they want, if user wants, without any pop-up, they explicitly go to another page and say, I want to delegate my voting power. There is no pop-up. You're not allowed by default.
Okay. So by default, that is the case at right now, basically. Nicholas, I see Nicholas, you do want to say something. What's up, Nicholas?
No, I would actually be curious to hear what Saigo or Raul think about that, especially, this user giving consent and all of that.
Did
I mean,
you
it's a
know
UI
that
question.
Binance holds like over 1 billion ADA?
But Binance is a centralized exchange. We cannot do anything about it. We cannot do anything about it.
Did you know that CF currently owns more ADA than the entirety of Cardano DeFi?
The CF is a private entity.
By the way, and TVL is like double at least what the actual ADA.
I cannot tell you as a person what you're supposed to do. I cannot tell you as a person what you're supposed to do. I cannot tell anybody what they are supposed to do. What I can tell is an algorithm what to do. What I can tell is what the rules by everyone has to play can be enforced. So if we can do something, we should do something. If we cannot do something, we should do our best. In the case of a centralized exchange, we cannot do something. It is not our unless you want to, I don't know, hack the entire Binance. Go ahead, but I'm not you. Like, you have to have control. We have control of something, and we are not doing anything.
Here, this is a very interesting take. This is a very interesting take because with Catalyst F13, I've seen just screening the community. I've seen community raise concerns about limiting influence of large ADA whales. Doesn't matter if it's centralized exchange, a specific entity, a DeFi protocol. It was just more general statement about limiting the influence of large ADA whales. My question to all table members: should there be an alternative voting scheme introduced to address this issue? Yes or no? And please clarify your answer.
I would say yes. However, here there is an issue. Like what Michele is proposing, for instance, is to remove the ADA that is inside smart contracts, DeFi platform, whatever, from Catalyst voting or governance and so on. However, if you do so, you are actually removing the ADA that is actually being used. Like the active people that are using Cardano and depositing into ADA, into DeFi protocols. If you remove that ADA, what should they do? Should they remove the ADA somehow before the snapshot? It's kind of controversial because there are many people that don't use ADA at all, no DeFi, no nothing, just staking, and they are not even using Catalyst, even if they hold a large amount. So you are just allowing them to vote that they are no incentives. How can you change that?
According to Zigo, this is not a problem, no? But still,
look at something like Indigo, for example, as a counterpoint to even like the evil DeFi protocols capturing the vote, right? They, through their designs and enabled by their use case, actually allow people to keep their vote power while they borrow against their ADA. This is the same thing as provided by many companies that just capture the ADA and give you a loan against Bitcoin, against ADA, against whatever, right? It's a centralized service. Do they allow you to also vote with that ADA? Maybe. I don't know, actually. Maybe they do. Maybe some company out there allows you to also keep your quote-unquote ADA staked.
Okay.
Maybe not. But it's something that's possible. And it's the same case here with Indigo. That should people in Indigo be unable to borrow against their ADA? Should you be unable to borrow against your ADA and keep voting with it? Well, what's the point in borrowing against your ADA then?
So
you might as well put it into some custodians' hands.
What happened to not your keys, not your crypto? Do we no longer believe to that anymore? Not your keys, not your crypto.
With that mentality, you should probably reevaluate your belief in proof of stake to begin with, and smart contracts.
When you're delegated to a pool, those are still they're not. They are controlled by the
pool operator, in fact.
No, what the?
Yes.
No,
Do you produce blocks? Do you sign blocks yourself?
I do not sign block, but I delegate my voting power. Still, my voting
And you
power
can
is
withdraw it anytime you want, just like you can from Catalyst.
my
right?
voting
Like
power is
with
still
the
under
Liquid
control of my
product.
keys. My keys, my crypto. My voting power is still under control of my keys. I'm not giving my voting
Just as
power.
you can withdraw from Liquid, just as you can withdraw from Minswap before the snapshot.
I have a question here, guys, because I mean, the first one was very well answered when I asked, should there be a new voting scheme? Raul, you're clear in your statement. Alternatively, should the funding rules be adjusted to exclude certain individuals, centralized exchanges, or entities from voting? Meaning, going forward, future funding rounds. Should
Denise,
that
can I touch on that real quick?
Sure, please.
So I think this is the interesting kind of parallel that we have, right? Where on Cardano we have 1 ADA 1 vote. On Catalyst we have 1 ADA 1 vote. In Catalyst there is a proposal that's being worked on to potentially to research alternative voting schemes and potentially implement that. The timeline for that to be completed is still some ways away. We know that this might be implemented between Fund 14 or Fund 15 from what the Catalyst team has shared publicly. Okay. In the absence of this, we have to look at fund rules. In the same way where Michele is saying, well, technically we need to create potential rules to prevent this from happening. But at the same time, my argument would be we are in a permissionless system. So if we cannot enforce something on chain, whether this be in terms of Catalyst, right, or in terms of Cardano, we cannot enforce something on chain. Should it actually, does it actually matter? And this is, I'm taking a very hard line here just for the sake of it. But this is the thing, right? If we cannot enforce something on chain, is it even worth talking about the ethics and morals of it if it's just a rule that could be bypassed by, off-chain markets for a particular thing like voting power? But yeah, I'll just pass over to Roman.
Yeah, please, Roman.
So I basically wanted to confirm what Alex is saying. So, I mean, there's ethical aspects to voting, there's process aspects, and then also what is on chain. But in the very end, I mean, you can emphasize on DeFi platforms to be ethical and to find at least processes that can govern how they select the proposals. For example, we were giving a thought how to delegate ADA to D-reps that are in the pools. And nowadays, for example, on Wing Riders, we have a way that all ADA on the protocol is also staked, and we are returning ADA back to the liquidity providers. And providers actually have an option to vote on which staking pool their ADA is delegated to. So are we still giving them some kind of means to make the decisions for themselves? And we were thinking that for D-reps, for example, we would be doing the same. So, I mean, if there is a will, I mean, there's also a way to do it. So each protocol basically can, based on the feedback, try to improve. And I think that should be the general purpose as well.
Yeah, so nice, well balanced. Michele.
Yeah, can I answer to Mike from the comments or?
Sure.
Yes. Also, regarding Multisig specifically, Multisig are clearly.
Maybe you could quickly also read Mike's question so that the audience can.
Oh yeah, sure. So the question is, I disagree with Michele on this though, because this would block some multisig DREPs who uses their power in good faith as a consensus DREP. Regarding multisig, it is very clear the distinction. Like we have native scripts that are much less powerful than Pluto scripts, and it is my view that it is long overdue a distinction on the ledger between native scripts and Pluto scripts, given this clear difference in power on what a Pluto script can do and a native script can do. So this is fairly addressable. We would need a smart contract in order. Not a smart contract, an hard fork in order to hard remove the Pluto script from voting. And so in that same hard fork, ideally, we would have also an additional credential type where we would have a distinction between a public key credential, a native script credential, and then a Pluto Script credential. Whereas, as for now, as you are saying, there is the distinction is only between a public key and a script general thing.
For sake of correctness, you would need to actually break the two-partite design of Cardano addresses rather than excluding Pluto Script from voting, because nobody actually uses Pluto Scripts for voting, for the record. Everybody uses pub keys for voting.
Yes.
Just so you know, if you wanted to take a hard line like that, which at the very least you're consistent in your approach, respectable, consistently contrarian, but if you wanted to take a hard line like that, you would need to break the two-partite design and basically somehow redesign the entire system of staking of Cardano, including the accounts, including everything. Yes, you would need.
That is not true.
Yes, it is true.
That is absolutely not true. First of all, I was very clear with my wording. My wording said to exclude ADAs or Lovelas, to be more precise, Lovelas that are present on UTXOs whose address as payment credential of a script. I'm not excluding script dereps. You can still have script dereps. There is a clear distinction. And also, regarding voting is a different thing from staking. Catalyst specifically uses staking because there was no governance implemented in the ledger. However, for the governance on chain, the voting is one thing, the staking is another thing. In fact, we have
Michele, so Indigo users cannot vote anymore on Catalyst at this point after that fork, because they are keeping the staking delegation, but they are in a smart contract.
Yes, absolutely. I would say yes. This is obvious. I recognize this is an extreme solution. I do recognize that. However, it is an extreme solution to an extreme problem. I repeat, we only get to screw up once. Once it is screwed up, we do not have any more a chain. We are effectively allowing the base for a DAO attack that happened on Ethereum. Do we want a DAO attack on Cardano? The gravity of the problem is fairly important. So I would say, yes, I realize that we are. This is a real issue of excluding potentially valid smart wallet in general. This is an issue. However, it is a relatively small issue if compared to a potential DAO attack on the entire chain. If there is no chain, smart wallets don't count nothing.
And don't you think that it's easier for someone to, if there are no smart contracts anymore that can vote, now it's just me, an attacker, against some whales? Isn't it easier for me to do this DAO attack?
Yeah, it would be easier for you to do a 51% attack at that point. And a 51% is way worse than a DAO attack. So if you have that kind of power, I would do a 51% attack first.
Interesting. Yeah.
I mean, Denisio, one thing is clear, right? There is no perfect voting scheme option way of how to do it, right? There's trade-offs that come with if you block one thing, then another thing. I mean, there are different attack vectors that come with different voting options. And I think what's just really necessary and important, and that we continue to research that, and then also do these experiments, for example, with merit-based voting or conviction style, like in Polkadot. And this is just something that is still developing, and we should just not stop researching that as an ecosystem, not just in Cardano but in general, because
totally agree with you here, guys. Just for the remaining minutes, what I'd like to do really is I'd like to just slide into segment number 3. So basically the potential repercussions on Cardano governance. Let's assume for a moment that all table members here, would eventually participate in the on-chain governance process by becoming a DREP. whether you decide to submit a governance action or your own that requires funding. First, before we go into that, are there anyone here on the table members who are planning to become a DREP?
I am already a DREP.
Or maybe already a DREP?
Just quickly for others, we are not, and as I mentioned, so we will have kind of a process to delegate the ADA in the pools to the DREPs, so by the liquidity providers.
Okay.
And by the way, guys, I need to leave now, so thanks a lot for the discussion and enjoy the day. Bye.
Cool. Thank you, Ronan. Thank you. Okay, so I know, Michele, you just confirmed you're already a DREP. What about Optim and Fluid? Are you guys planning to become a DREP as well?
We thought about something doing like that ourselves. Currently, whatever Optim captures, we are delegated to butane, but we thought about actually running our own thing, but we feel like just delegating it away to other people is better, frankly, because we feel pretty represented by other people's views already.
Okay. What about you guys, Fluid Tokens?
Personally, from the platform perspective, we are not, since we won't have ADA power to delegate, we are not going to delegate to a DREP, or we are not going to run a platform DREP. However, I am personally a DREP, but the views are my views, and it's not a Fluid Tokens DREP thing. And yeah,
when it comes to large ADA holders, right? Let's say the influential ones that are currently participating in Catalyst various ways by either utilizing the ADA in the liquidity pools or providing more opportunities for others to borrow voting power. Do you think that with governance, right, that the same that is currently being applied in Catalyst should be applied in the governance era? And should there be anything in the guardrails or in the Constitution that prohibits that? I think, Nicholas, what is your take on this?
Do you mean that prohibits whales from participating, or could you?
Yeah, exactly. From let's say using someone else's ADA to basically acquire that level of
yeah. I mean,
power.
currently, and I don't want to be that person, but in the delegate approved constitution in Article 5, Section 6, okay, I am that person. It says that DREPs shall not pay compensation to an ADA owner or a designee in exchange for being appointed as a DREP. So what does that tell us, right? If that is implemented in the constitution now, if that's being voted, I mean, one thing that I also need to say, the constitution that was approved by the delegates in Buenos Aires and in Nairobi, that still needs to go through the on-chain voting. So after the next hard fork, there has to be an update constitution governance action where that updated constitution then needs to be approved. So what was agreed at the Constitutional Convention, that's not currently the constitution that's in place on Cardano. Currently, we have the interim constitution that's live. If you query the blockchain, that's what you get. It's in the Conway Genesis file. The interim constitution, that's the one we got to work with now. But in this new one that is then being voted on, right, it says that DREPs shall not compensate ADA owners, basically bribing them to delegate to you. But that's interesting, right? Because especially if we look at these different DeFi protocols, they are, I would say, an intermediary in this situation, right? They are the ones who are facilitating basically this voting power, or it's a voting power market, and they're just connecting buyers to sellers, right? In a way. So if they don't themselves profit from that, so for example, if a protocol acquires votes just for themselves, that would be considered unconstitutional, right? But if they're just facilitating this, I think that is somehow a loophole, because, right, if you're only facilitating this transaction, it could be perceived as still constitutional. And I hope I didn't confuse anyone too much with that. But yeah, besides that, I mean, it also states in the Constitution that we have a stake-based governance system where one Lovelace is one vote, right? So this is the law of the land of Cardano.
Yeah, that's
and
correct.
If we compare that now, for example, to Project Catalyst, Project Catalyst is its own thing, right? It has its own governance structure. It has its own methodology on how to do voting and how they reach a decision. And the Constitution, right, that applies to the core protocol. This applies to Cardano's governance model. But if Project Catalyst decides to change their model, right, that's totally up to them. I mean, it's a product, right? So I'm
That's
really
correct.
curious to see how they're going to do that in the
But
future.
the thing is here, right, is that a lot of people kind of is using Catalyst as an example, you know, to like how they're going to operate in the on-chain governance framework. And that's something that is really, really interesting, really to tap in, you know, on, because Optim, for example, you know, you guys, you do have a liquidity pool, right? And in essence, can you use the ADA in that pool to delegate to a DREP? Could that be done?
Well, the way it works, the ADA in OEDA is cyclically every epoch sold to the highest bidders. So it is never a case, technically speaking, that we have to delegate to someone, right? Because it is just sold off to the highest bidders. So it's never inherent to the system that the system delegates. Now, the system, in case something goes wrong, does have a stake key attached to it, so that, you know, it is delegated. It is actually, you know, both staked and delegated. But that's more of like a fallback case in case the system just somehow has something go wrong with it. But yes, under normal circumstances, it does in fact just sell off to the highest bidder, and we have no right in saying how they delegate, how they stake. So that's how it works.
Yeah. Is there, Nicholas, coming back to you, is there a way that delegates or community members could check if a DeFi protocol is breaching the, let's say, the rules or within the Constitution? Is that even possible?
I mean, I know what you're trying to ask me is if there's a dashboard somewhere you can see if the behavior of a given DREP is unconstitutional or not.
Exactly.
Currently, something like that doesn't exist. So it's really up to the individual ADA holder, right, to take that responsibility and make it something that they do, I don't know, once a month. Maybe that's too much. We don't have that much time, right? As everyone knows, time is the real currency. But every, I don't know, half a year, you look at your DREP and how they voted. What did they do? Did they go against their own rationale, their code of conduct, if there is a code of conduct? Did they vote in a way that you just think is not aligned with your views? It's really, right, what I think a lot of us still need to understand, me included as an ADA holder, right, is that it's my responsibility to also check what my DREP is doing. And the same also applies, I would say, as a community, we also need to be and hold all these players in the ecosystem accountable. I expect people to go and complain, for example, if we in the Cardano Foundation are not adhering to our standards that we define in our Cardano, that they point that out and raise that, right? We need to keep each other. It's mutual accountability.
Absolutely. Yes.
And yes, we should also have probably better tooling around that, so we can have that.
Yeah. Alex, what is your thought on this, actually? I'm curious to hear you, just before we close.
For me, I think large stakeholders, especially those participating in DeFi, offer risks that were clearly highlighted within the space. But I think they also bring opportunities. typically we speak about races to the bottom, where we are trying to kind of reduce costs and everything like that. And Michele's tweet highlighted the fact that it was pretty cheap to actually have a significant amount of voting power. And some of the other chats that I've had in the past and even today kind of corroborate that, right? What if it was about a race to the top, right? What if the positive output of this was a race to the top, more voting participation, makes it more expensive to pass certain votes, and therefore it drives that participation up, right? We were only considering the fact that we were driving prices down, but if the price of a particular voting a governance action becomes higher and higher and higher because of the actual DeFi protocols and the dynamics that are involved in this, perhaps that's a good thing in terms of spam reduction, in terms of ensuring that people make sure that what they put on chain as a governance action and what they vote for is actually competitive. But again, we can look at hopefully some research on this. I think that's one of the things that we should do as a community. Cardano has always been research first, and perhaps with governance we've gotten directly into the practicalities of it before actually kind of taking a look at this. But beyond that, I really think that even if we find the right research and everything that we might philosophize about, at the end of the day, it's going to be about the real politics. It's going to be about the large stakeholders, which do exist and are significantly larger than CF and many other DeFi protocols or any Genesis entities in the Cardano ecosystem. That's where we will see the rubber hit the road. And that's why it's so important for finding ways that enable smaller holders of ADA to potentially together have a significant voice, whether this is through social pressure or this is, again, through the power of the ADA. One ADA is equal to one vote. And say 600 million people that own one bit of ADA could challenge the CF. And obviously we know that most people own more than one ADA and the technicalities of this and all this kind of stuff. So again, it's about driving participation up and finding ways to enable the small fry to compete with the big whales.
Good.
I consider myself small fry, therefore I include myself in this statement.
Okay, thank you so much there. Before we close, I do want to hear from Michele, any closing statements from Zigo, and then we'll end with Nicholas. Michele.
Yes, well, I pretty much, I think I made clear my position. One thing I just want to make, I probably didn't mention enough, like, yes, I will say at a certain point, transparency is important, but it's not sufficient. It is necessary, but not sufficient. Because well, transparency. If I go rob a bank, and I say I go fully uncovered, and this is my ID. This is me. I'm robbing you. I'm being transparent, but I'm still robbing a bank. So transparency, yes, it is necessary, but it is not sufficient. There are many protocols that are being transparent, some less, but regardless, they are still allowing this essentially what can be seen. There are arguments to see this as a power grab. So we should pay attention. We should definitely not don't trust but verify, and possibly the only thing that you can trust is yourself. So if you can represent your voice, be a rep yourself, and yeah, governance is more important than you think.
Clear. Thanks for that, Michele. Zigo.
Honestly, I don't have much else in mind. I think everything important has been said. If you've been on Twitter recently and especially outraged by the actions of the holders of ADA, as is, well, that's the world of governance you're living in right now. And whether you like it or not, there's ways to reduce the impact and make sure everybody's voices are heard. But it is certainly not through through, I would say, the small fries participating directly, because purely of economical reasons, of transaction costs, it's not practical. The emergence of pooled solutions is, for a good reason, at very least economically speaking, the backbone of modern crypto, to make sure high availability of these things, participation is ensured. There's dedicated people who ensure that this is happening. That's why you need to choose your DREPs correctly. That's why it is so. Representing yourself is not viable for super small ADA holders. And frankly, super small ADA holders are not on chain. They are on Binance, who's probably, for all practical purposes, going to abstain from all governance, which just amplifies everybody else's vote. So that's my statement, and that's it, really.
Thanks, Zygo, Optim Finance. Nicholas, ending with you.
Thank you, Denisio. Yeah, and to really also stay true to what I said in my intro about increasing governance participation, I would highly encourage you as an ADA holder, if you have not yet delegated your voting power to a DREP, or maybe you want to register as a DREP yourself, highly encourage you to do so right now. See this as a call to action because, right, it is important to participate, even if you have not a lot of ADA. Governance is super important. And one thing that as a wish, I would say to the community and in general to everyone, is that we treat each other with, civility, that we are factual, that we don't jump to conclusions without having all of the details. Because always think about, if there's somebody spinning a narrative, what do they have to gain from that? This is something that helps me personally try to understand some of these things. And yeah, governance can be a mess. The only way we can solve it is if we participate and if we have an informed community that can take over the reins. And I'm confident that we'll get there.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nicholas, and also for your closing statements, all table members. I know that Wing Riders had to leave a bit earlier. Thank you, of course, for joining. And we also had, correct me if I'm wrong, we also had Fluid Tokens, who also needed to leave a bit earlier. So also thank you for joining. And also in the chat, there were some others who really participated very well. Chris Keita, Mike Hornan, and Jane Saran. Thank you so much for participating and for joining us. Unfortunately, we couldn't bring all of your questions up due to some limitations, but we did see them. Again, thank you all, and until the next Roundtable Talk, take care.
Thank you. Yes.